Welcome to ListLab. Today we are looking at out-of-place artifacts, strange finds that seem to challenge the timeline of history. But this is not just a list of unexplained ancient discoveries. For each case, we will examine the alternative theory people remember, and the most likely explanation based on the historical evidence. If you enjoy ancient history mysteries, controversial archaeological discoveries, and calm investigations into mysterious ancient artifacts, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments which case you think is still the hardest to explain. Number 10. The Maine Viking coin. A Viking coin turning up in Maine sounds like the kind of find that should rewrite history. That is why this small silver penny has become one of the most discussed out-of-place artifacts in North America. The alternative theory is that it proves direct Norse contact deeper into the American mainland, and some people believe finds like this are treated too cautiously because they complicate accepted history. The strongest evidence begins with the coin itself, which is widely accepted as genuine and linked to the reign of Olaf the Peaceful in medieval Norway. The more likely explanation is that the coin moved through long indigenous trade networks, rather than arriving through a Viking settlement in Maine itself. That matters because a traded object can travel a very long distance without proving a colony or expedition at the final site. What is confirmed fact is that the coin is real and that its reported discovery in 1957 AD made it an immediate ancient artifacts mystery. What remains debated is whether it reflects direct Norse contact, exchanged through trade, or a later intrusion into the site. Number 9. The London Hammer. A hammer sealed inside a hard, stone-like casing sounds impossible at first hearing. That is exactly why the London Hammer became one of the best-known controversial artifacts in history. The alternative theory says it is evidence of lost ancient technology, or even proof that advanced toolmaking existed in a forgotten age. The strongest evidence points in a less dramatic direction. Researchers have long noted that the hammer resembles a relatively ordinary 19th century mining or workshop tool, not an object with unusual design or unknown engineering. The casing around it is also important because mineral concretions can form around modern objects and later appear far older than they really are. In other words, the mystery may be geological rather than historical. What is confirmed fact is that the hammer exists and that it became enclosed in a hardened deposit. What remains uncertain is the exact formation process and the incomplete discovery record that helped turn it into one of the most repeated ancient technology mysteries. Number 8. The Saqqara Bird. A wooden object from ancient Egypt that resembles a glider is always going to attract attention. The Saqqara Bird has therefore become a regular feature in discussions of ancient engineering, mysterious ancient artifacts, and lost ancient technology. The alternative theory says it preserves real knowledge of flight and that ancient designers understood aerodynamic principles far earlier than we are told. The strongest evidence is more restrained. Modern aerodynamic studies suggest the object does not behave like a practical glider unless major changes are made to it, which weakens the claim that it was a true flying machine. Mainstream researchers usually treat it as a symbolic, decorative, or ceremonial object from around 200 BC. That explanation also fits ancient Egyptian culture, where bird forms had strong religious and artistic meaning. What is confirmed fact is that the object is authentic and genuinely unusual in shape. What remains debated is its exact intended purpose, because unusual design does not always equal advanced technology. Number 7. The Dorchester Pot. A metal vessel said to have emerged from blasted rock in Massachusetts sounds like a direct challenge to the human timeline. That is why the Dorchester Pot still appears in lists of unexplained ancient discoveries and controversial archaeological discoveries. The alternative theory says it points to a lost civilization theory, with metal working far older than mainstream archaeology allows. The strongest evidence comes from the original reports, and those reports are less solid than the legend suggests. The object was described after blasting, not during a controlled archaeological excavation, which means its context was never secure. That leaves open the possibility that it was a more recent decorative object mixed into the rubble. Some later analysts have argued that its appearance is much more consistent with a Victorian ornamental piece than with an artifact from deep antiquity. What is confirmed fact is that 19th century reports about the object exist, and that the story spread widely. What remains uncertain is what the object really was, and whether the mystery comes from the artifact itself or from how the story was repeated over time. Number 6. The Coso Artifact. An object that looked like a geode but appeared to contain a machine part was always going to become famous. The Coso Artifact is still one of the most cited out-of-place artifacts in debates about ancient civilization mysteries and lost ancient technology. The alternative theory says it is proof of advanced ancient technology, with a manufactured component somehow trapped inside material that looked immensely old. The strongest evidence points instead to a 20th century spark plug. X-ray studies and part comparisons have closely matched the core to a modern spark plug design, while the outer shell is better understood as a concretion rather than a true geode. That changes the whole case, because a modern part covered by mineral buildup is surprising, but not historically impossible. The real lesson here is how easily geological appearance can distort judgment. What is confirmed fact is that the core is man-made and modern in type. What remains uncertain is the full story of how the object moved from discovery into legend, but the likely explanation is far more ordinary than the myth. Number 5. The Baghdad Battery. A jar with metal parts that can produce a small electrical charge sounds like one of the great ancient technology mysteries. That is why the Baghdad Battery remains central to discussions of ancient electricity theory and controversial archaeological finds. The alternative theory says it was an ancient battery used for electroplating, ritual practice, or medicine, and that it hints at lost ancient technology now forgotten. The strongest evidence is more cautious. Replica experiments show that a small voltage can be produced, but archaeologists also point out that there is no clear supporting evidence for a working electrical system around the object. There are no secure wires, no obvious connected devices, and no accepted body of electroplated artifacts that settles the question. Some researchers instead argue that it may have been a container for scrolls or ritual substances. What is confirmed fact is the jar's unusual structure and genuine antiquity. What remains debated is whether it ever had an electrical purpose, or whether the modern word battery has pushed the object into a role it never had. Number 4. The Piri Reis Map. A 16th century map that seems to show surprising geographical knowledge will always invite big claims. The Piri Reis Map is therefore one of the most famous cases in any ancient maps mystery discussion. The alternative theory says it preserves knowledge copied from far older source maps, perhaps from a lost civilization, with advanced surveying or seafaring skill. The most dramatic version says it shows Antarctica before the ice, which would imply knowledge far older than accepted history allows. The strongest evidence does not require that conclusion. Notes on the map itself say it was compiled from multiple earlier charts, including materials linked to the age of exploration, and scholars usually interpret the disputed southern landmass as a conventional southern continent rather than Antarctica. Distortion from projection and copying also explains why the map can look far more mysterious than it is. What is confirmed fact is that the map is genuine, historically important, and preserved as a major document of cartographic history. What remains uncertain is exactly which older charts Piri Reis had access to, and how much of their detail has now been lost. Number 3. The Dendera Light Relief. A temple carving that looks to modern eyes, like a giant bulb, immediately creates a strong visual mystery. That is why the Dendera Light Relief remains one of the most famous examples in ancient electricity theory and ancient world discoveries. The alternative theory says the relief records electrical lighting in ancient Egypt and hints at a hidden technical tradition. The strongest evidence for that view is mainly visual resemblance. The strongest historical explanation is symbolic instead. Egyptologists generally interpret the relief as a religious image connected to creation, rebirth, and divine power, with the serpent, lotus, and jed fitting established sacred imagery rather than an engineered device. No widely accepted supporting machinery has ever been found to confirm an ancient electrical system. That absence matters because extraordinary technology usually leaves more than one clue behind. What is confirmed fact is that the relief is real and visually unusual. What remains debated is whether every layer of its symbolism is fully understood, but the likely explanation is mythological rather than mechanical. Number 2. The crystal skulls. Crystal skulls seem almost designed to become legends. They combine striking visual impact with stories about hidden knowledge, ancient civilization mysteries, and controversial artifacts in history. The alternative theory says they are genuine pre-Columbian relics made with lost carving methods or preserved spiritual knowledge. Some versions even suggest institutions quietly changed their position once the implications became too controversial. The strongest evidence points the other way. Scientific examination by major institutions found tool marks and abrasives that match relatively modern carving techniques rather than known ancient Mesoamerican workmanship. Provenance is also a major problem because many of the most famous skulls do not come from secure excavations. That weakens their historical credibility. Before the material analysis is even considered, what is confirmed fact is that several high-profile crystal skulls are modern creations. What remains uncertain is the full story behind every skull in private circulation, and that lingering uncertainty helps keep the legend alive. Number 1. The Antikythera Mechanism. A machine from the ancient world with precision gears and astronomical functions sounds almost too advanced to be real. That is why the Antikythera Mechanism stands at the top of so many lists of ancient engineering marvels and mysterious ancient artifacts. The alternative theory says it proves a hidden stream of lost ancient technology, with ancient science reaching levels far beyond what mainstream history admits. What makes this case different is that the device truly is extraordinary, even without any fringe interpretation. Imaging, inscriptions, and reconstruction work show that it tracked astronomical cycles and could predict eclipses with remarkable sophistication. Mainstream scholarship places it within the Hellenistic scientific tradition, not outside it, which means it expands our understanding of the ancient world rather than overturning it completely. In that sense, it is one of the rare cases where the accepted explanation is already astonishing. What is confirmed fact is that advanced precision gearing existed in the ancient Mediterranean by the late 2nd century BC. What remains debated is how common such machines were, who ordered this one, and how much related knowledge disappeared after its time. These famous, out-of-place artifacts endure because they sit in the space between real mystery and incomplete evidence. Which entry did you find most interesting, and which one do you think has the strongest likely explanation? If you enjoyed this investigation, like the video, subscribe to ListLab, and leave your view in the comments.